What is going on, family? I am very stoked to finally be here today and to finally get into this Paris Paloma Labor the Cacophony official lyric video. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for everybody who has put like their and shared their experiences and the experience of those around them, from fellow family members, really just everybody who has shared like so much just on my first reaction to this song. There's been so many people that I couldn't not get over, like just reading everybody's comments. And if there's one thing I've said about my channel, I was like, I try to respond to each one of them, and I do read them all. Sometimes I'm a little slow at it, but I do read them all, and I do really appreciate the fact that you guys have been so open to share those within the channel, because I feel like it's just been so great and such a blessing to see that. And the fact that you guys have even like just encouraged and supported me as a man to be able to even try to even talk about some of these things. So I feel like I have learned so much through your guys' comments about just perspective, again, for like what I think that I didn't take away from like the first time that I listened to this song. I have listened to it probably at least 100 times probably since then, so I have a lot more perspective, especially after you guys have given me so much more with talking about deeper meanings and stuff behind some of the lyrics. So I'm excited to see what I'm going to take away from it today, because I've already been told that this was like a really, really powerful version of this song, so I'm excited to check it out. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
All day, every day, therapist, mother, maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him, so then he never lifts a finger, 24/7, baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do too much labor. Why are you hanging on so tight?
I think it's really cool how they started off with like that part. Like it creates like a whole different energy for the song, like period. So I thought it was just really cool how they add that part right there, and you can see the crowd like in the actual live perspective. I think that's really cool to add that to the video, since like where there's no like actual visual like from the music video's perspective. So like it's like just already setting a different tone for the record that way.
To the rope that I'm hanging from, off this island, this was an escape plan. Carefully timed it, so let me go and dive into the waves below. Who tends the orchards? Who fixes up the gables? Emotional torture from the head of your high table. Who fetches the water from the Rocky Mountain spring and walk back down again to feel your words and their sharp sting?
I see that line right there, to feel your words and their sharp sting. I feel like that kind of ties back to like when she's like talking about like the emotional torture side, where I feel like I didn't really touch on that too much about the first time that I listened and reacted to this song, was how much men, and this it kind of goes both ways, but we're here trying to support the ladies, right? But so we're going to keep it on the perspective of the men on the women that way, where even when you tying it back to that idea of like doing too much labor, when you are still tending the orchards and you're fetching the water and you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, right? Like you are being a good wife, a good partner, a good spouse, a good mother, whatever that they expected you to be, right? But it's still not enough. It's still not enough, and you're still going to emotionally torture people, where you will still make those comments about like how just to dig a little bit, where it's not just enough to do all the work, but you also have to also kill my psyche too. You know what I mean? Where, like I said, everything goes both ways, and everything can always be from both perspectives. But this song is more or less talking about like when that is the common phrase for how men a lot of times can treat women, where you ask for it all, and then yet it's still somehow their fault. And we have been ingrained to believe that our opinion is more important than the next person, We just talked about that earlier in the stream about how we as human beings are naturally selfish people. And especially as a guy, we are taught that our shit means so much more than everybody else's does. So the idea of even just putting the woman onto the correct playing field of being the equal is even just a starting point. For a lot of people, we're just even getting to that point of equality where it's the same is the first part of the battle, because we're still fighting that part, because we still don't really treat them this as equals and partners, because we're still that selfish, and we still project onto them a lot of times, even though they are bending over backwards for us in so many ways. Because if I think about every relationship that I've ever been in, no matter how they were, I can recognize the fact that they did a lot for me that I know was just for me. Just for me. And no matter how much I ever did for just them, they always did more. I'm going to be honest with you. They always have. Every single time. And I feel like that's just kind of like a common thing that we as guys, I think, have to recognize that even if we are ones that recognize that within ourselves and we try to do the right thing by those ladies in our lives, we have to still try to do it that much more, because we're still kind of a little behind the curve. We really are. Like, women have been around as long as we have, and yet we're still having this conversation. We're not talking about Roman empires and shit like that anymore. We're not talking about going and, pillaging lands and all that kinds of shit, because we've already been there, done that. Like, men have already run the world for so long. And we're still having the same conversation about just making sure that those ladies that helped us get there and make all those things happen get treated properly. And for some reason, we are still here having this conversation today. And I think that it's important for those of you guys out there as well to try to speak on some of these things, especially today, because there's been this comment that I have heard that has stuck with me for a few years now. When I heard that it's not enough to just to be anti, you have to be. It's not enough to just be pro, you have to be anti. And I think there's a lot of truth behind that statement. It's not enough to just to be for women's equality. You kind of have to be against the idea of pushing it back and pushing it back down. And you have to be outspoken about it. You have to speak up when you see it. It's not enough to just let somebody get away with those kind of comments anymore. When they make those little sly comments that are setting women backwards, and they're putting women back into a position of being second fiddle to the rest of the world that way. I think that it's important for us to call that out and recognize it when we see it. Because it's not enough just to be against it. We have to really be against it. That's how you make real change. It's not enough to just be silent and just say behind closed doors, I don't agree with that. I think you have to be outspoken about it. Even if it's uncomfortable. Because trust me, it's uncomfortable for those ladies. I know that. I know it is. They've lived that life every single fucking day. And we don't even have a damn clue of what that's even like, because we've never walked a mile in their shoes. We can try to put ourselves into their mindsets, but we'll never know what those things are, what that really feels like. We'll never really know what it's like to be gawked at like you're just some piece of meat. I'm sure some of you guys out there probably might know what that feels like, but trust me, the higher percentage of ladies know what that feels like than us guys. The higher percentage of ladies knows what it feels like to give every single thing that you have to somebody and it not be enough for them because you're not meeting their expectations because of societal standards that they don't even realize they have. There's been so many people who have made comments about how, when they try to explain this, of why this song means something to them and why this song is important to women out there. And they try to explain it to the guy in their life, and they say that they don't get it. They don't get it. That's all too far and too frequent too. That we don't even try to listen a lot of times too. We don't even try to hear their perspective. We are always too busy trying to tell everyone. We're always too busy trying to get what we have to say out instead of actually hearing what people say. And then I think that goes for like literally people in general. We're always really quick to try to give our opinion instead of hearing how somebody else's opinion might be different than ours and why it might be different than ours. Let's keep going.
And I'm getting fucking tired. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If our love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure make me do a whole lot of labor. The kind of skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bed chamber. You make me do too much labor. Apologies for my tongue, and never yours. Busy lapping from flowing cup and stabbing with your fork. I know you're a smart man, and weaponized.
I like the fact that they added like the little like laughing in there and in this version of like the smart man, because I feel like that was always like a kind of like an underlying jab, like in the song, right? Was like, you know, you're playing into the ego, if you will, with that, like, you know, oh, I know you're so smart, right? Like, you know, that's how I took that line. So I like the fact that they kind of added like the little laughing part, like right there after that in this version.
The false incompetence is dominance under a guise. If we had a daughter, I'd watch and could not save her. The emotional torture from the head of your high table. She'd do what you taught her. She'd meet the same cruel fate. So now I've gotta run so I can undo this mistake. At least I gotta try. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If our love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure make me do a whole lot of labor. The kind of skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bed chamber. You make me do too much labor.
I really liked the part in the second verse when she talks about like having like the daughter and how she has to basically like run from him to save her. I didn't really mention that in the first go around, but I feel like a lot of people brought that up in the fact of like the decisions that you have to make for your kids or for your future kids, you know, because at the end of the day, sometimes the first thing that you got to do is make a decision for yourself. And the thought process behind that is really recognizing in whoever fathers your children is probably going to treat your daughter the same way that they would treat you. And is that really how you would want somebody to treat your kid? I know a lot of times I've heard so many people say, would you really treat your own daughter this way to a guy, right? And they would all say no. They would all say no, but they do it anyway. But they still treat somebody else's daughter that way. What do you think is going to happen when they have their own kid? They might feel differently. They might have a sudden change of heart. Some people do. But in a lot of cases, especially with this subject matter, like, you know, when you are a one-type track nature person, you're going to just do the same thing with everybody. So the way that you treat me as the mom, you're going to treat the kid the same way. You're going to treat them as a secondhand citizen who is just there to do what you say, not as you do. I'm sure all the ladies out there can talk about how much differently their upbringing of maybe a brother had versus their upbringing and the expectations that the parents potentially put on the brother versus they put on them and how they look different. That right there is not equality. We don't put the same expectations on even the same gender of people within our own families. Just calling it how I see it, guys. You can probably tell me I'm wrong because Johnny's wrong quite a bit.
All day, every day, therapist, mother, maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, lift to attendance, so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do too much labor. All day, every day, therapist, mother, maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, lift to
really do always pause at the worst possible times. I really do. That the chorus of this song is just so moving and emotional. Like I feel like even as a man who it was not written for my enjoyment and entertainment that way, I still feel all that energy of like what you're supposed to feel from that. It's very uplifting. It's very powerful, even though it's very sad at the same time. You know what I mean? I don't even think I could say the word capillaries the way that she says it because I'm an American. But the way she says it sounds so damn cool, and it sounds like the way it's probably supposed to be said. But starting off the hook of a song with that is incredibly moving and powerful. Somebody had mentioned, quite a few people actually had mentioned about the obvious, I think, lyric right there in front of me that I did not really touch on the first time that I touched here. First time I reacted to this song. Jesus, if I could talk. When it's not an act of love if you make her. I talked about a whole different perspective on that when in my first reaction, and a lot of people called me out about the fact that, like, you know, that they felt that was a very obvious line talking about SA, and my mind didn't immediately jump to that when I heard that, but I completely understand. And I think that those people are probably right, that that's probably exactly what she was talking about. And I don't really feel like there's anything much more for me to say about that other than the fact that obviously it's definitely not an act of love if you make anybody. You know what I mean? We talked about this earlier with a whole different song about the idea of it's always you need two people to say yes to something. If it's not doing that, we're not doing the right thing. You know what I mean? So forcing anybody to do anything is never coming from a place of love. So if we're talking about that particular subject, absolutely. It's definitely never an act of love if you're making anybody, because that's just flat out wrong and no one should ever do it. So I felt that needed to be said because I think some people thought that I was basically overlooking that thought process or that point of that. And I just needed to make sure that I said that I am not for anybody forcing anything on anybody. You know what I mean? That I am not about that at all. So I just had to get that cleared up. That's, I think, all I got for this one, guys. Thank you again for all the love and support on the original reaction video for this one. It really did just mean a lot to me, just the fact that anybody has shared all of their stories within the channel. We have a home really for everybody on the Discord. For anybody that feels like they might need to talk to a friend or just need somebody to kind of lean on. So be sure to check that out if that's something that you're interested in. And that's all I got for this one, guys. I appreciate you guys once more again for letting me even talk about this. So thank you for enjoying this video. Be kind to a stranger today. Tell somebody that you love them. And if you haven't joined the Foxtrot family, there's always room for you.